And welcome in, Draft Nicks, to another edition of Draft Nation's Real Baseball Talk. I'm Chris Mack. Don't forget, not just baseball-wise, but any of the four major professional sports and really beyond, you can always stay up to date on the team-building endeavors of every single one of those squads, whether it's the NBA and NHL, who just got started, obviously, the NFL, who's coming up on their own trading deadline very soon, college football, what prospects may be coming to the NFL, or, of course, baseball, which just wrapped up, and we're going to talk about in a moment. Free agency will be getting started hot and heavy very soon. DraftNation.com is the place to go to find out what your favorite teams are doing. By all means, create your free account today at DraftNation.com as we get ready to put a bow on the 2024 Major League Baseball season. I bring in my friends, CMU head coach Claudio Reilsono, and from Pittsburgh Baseball Now and Baseball Digest, John Perrotto. Gentlemen, that was not what we expected. We talked last week about Yankees-Dodgers, and whether it was Claudio picking the Yankees or John and I picking the Dodgers, we all thought this was going to be a long, drawn-out dogfight of a series. We thought it would go 7 games, and it didn't. It was one team just sort of imposing its will upon the other. And I think we saw the impact in a short series, especially, of what a superstar hitting his stride at just the right time can do for a team. Claudio, that's where I want to start with you. Freddie Freeman had the series of a lifetime in this World Series. He wins World Series MVP. Obviously, the 4 home runs in the 5-game series, but then everything else, it felt like everything spun off of Freddie Freeman in this series for the Dodgers.
Bob Watson, former Houston Astros star and Yankees GM, he said one time about pressure. He said it's like when you're stuck in the mud, what do? You put that pedal down even further and you get further stuck in the mud. If you look at Freeman and his body language and just everything, and a Judge, night and day. Freeman got hot at the right time, and his swings were great. Again, what do I always say about staying closed? He stayed closed. We'll get to that later. But I don't think the Yankees pitched him well. Okay. I did say Ohtani pitch him outside, and they did pitch him outside, and he reached. He would stick his butt out, stick his bat out, and he didn't hit anything. Freeman, it seemed like they threw right to his bat path. And he did his part and he took advantage of it. And then everyone else went from there. Edmund, I said, was going to have a nice series. I was wrong about Muncy. Hit the ball hard a few times, but they caught it. But Freeman was the leader on the field and off. He set the tone. Mookie Betts did his thing. They just played loose, but they were resilient. They had in their pocket, they were the number one team with comebacks in the National League, and they did it again. And something that Freeman said, talking to Alex Rodriguez and Jeter and Ortiz, he said that they had that the GM, the front office, built the right team. And I always say, not good location, good location, good location in real estate. I used to say good people, good people, good people. Then I changed it to right people, right people, right people. The Dodgers certainly had the right people. Dave Roberts made a lot of moves, some unnecessarily, but they worked. They worked. The Yankees pressed. They didn't do well. They hit 212, although the Dodgers only hit about 206. But they came through at the right time. I'm sure we'll get into the infamous 5th inning. But yeah. They played loose. They were resilient. They played with confidence. Never one time did they ever feel like we're done.
Yeah, John, I wanted to touch on something Claudio brought up there, and that was the team building aspect of this. These Dodgers, we're a year removed from Diamondbacks and Rangers in the World Series, and just get to the deadline and then get hot, and maybe you'll carry it through October. This year's postseason, it felt like, especially the World Series and the Dodgers winning it in the fashion they did, is sort of a reinforcement of, it's all well and good to get hot at the right time and have the right strategy for a year or half a year or whatever it may be. These Dodgers under Andrew Friedman, this has been their strategy for a long time. This is a team that, over the last decade or so has committed themselves, and they've got the financial wherewithal to do it, obviously, and make mistakes, but they've committed themselves to building this team the right way in a certain analytical direction, and it all came together again behind Betts, Ohtani, Freeman, and pieces like Edmund, who Claudio just mentioned again. This is a total team that looks like, and I think this is the scary part for a lot of other fans, that looks like it's built for the long haul.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think when you have a team that has money and smarts both and an ample supply, it's hard to beat an organization like that. You look at the Dodgers, and I mean, obviously they spent big on free agents, but they also developed some of their own players, and they've been really great for finding guys in the margins, like Max Muncy, for example, who was DFA'd by Oakland. He really did nothing in his time in the big leagues in Oakland. There was nothing to suggest this guy was going to be a two-time All-Star, a 30 home run hitter, yet there he is. And they have a great player development system. They have a great scouting department, and they have a great analytics department. So they have everything pretty well covered that you would want to have covered. And again, their payroll is $266 million, which certainly helps, but they're smart too on top of it. And Andrew Friedman showed in Tampa Bay for a long time, their president of baseball operations, that he could win on a shoestring budget in Tampa. So you put him in a situation like that where he brings, that ability to build a team on a low budget and then give him money. And he's just been tremendous in the 12 years he's been there.
Yeah, I mean, they have built something that feels like, I saw in the postgame, Shohei Ohtani reportedly said to someone, 9 more. He's got 9 more years on the deal. He wants to win 9 more World Series. That's probably a little bit of a lofty expectation, but hey, shoot for the stars, right? And so they realistically feel like they could be that competitive and in this thing deep into October over the better part of the next decade. The Yankees, on the other hand, they've got some big offseason questions, not the least of which is Juan Soto, which we'll get to in a couple minutes. But it felt, it felt like they never found any traction in this series, Claudio. And when they finally did, right, it happens in Game 5 where, you get a homer from Judge at one point late in the series. You finally start to see some offense. And then it all falls apart in that 5th inning that you mentioned, whether it was Judge literally just taking his eyes off the ball on a low liner to center field, whether it's the poor throw by Volpe on the attempted force out at third base that Jazz Chisholm wasn't able to corral, whether it's Garrett Cole, who's doing everything he can on the mound to try and battle out of that inning, just having a brain cramp at the worst possible moment and forgetting to cover first base, or not thinking that he had to attempt to cover first base because it looked like originally the ball was taking Rizzo toward the bag. That had to be, as a collegiate head coach and someone who's helped players come up through the ranks over the years, that had to be a particularly painful inning to watch.
It was, but the thing that I was taken aback from, Cito Gaston of the Toronto Blue Jays used to talk about momentum, and you don't hear that a lot in baseball so much. But what Boone, in my opinion, should have done was go out there and just kind of calm things down a little bit and break the momentum of the Dodgers instead of what do they call that? An assembly line. It seemed like they were going up there and mistake, catcher's interference, balk. Are you, relax. It's not always going out there and talk X's and O's. Go out there and relax everybody. Hey, take a deep breath. Pay attention. I always tell my guys, want the ball to come to you. Know what you're going to do with it. Relax. Make the routine play routine. And just kind of reset. And they didn't do that. But, you hear the word choke. I think of a choke, and forgive me for it's going to be, saying this about him, but Michael Spinks, when he fought Mike Tyson back in 1988, he kind of choked. He knew he was going to get pounded, and he choked. He just stood there and he got enough. Bill Buckner's was not a choke. It's just a bad thing. Aaron Judge, I don't think, to me, choking is you're afraid. You're afraid to make a mistake. Mm-hmm. They just, like you said, brain cramp, in my opinion. But I do think Boone should have gone out there and just settled things down. You hear coaches motivational. But also a role of the coach is to calm things down, relax. And that's what I would have done. Real quick, I had a kid who played for me years ago. He was a stud and a half in high school, pitches his first game. First player, he walks. Second player, he hits. Third player, first 2 balls in the ground. I go out there and he was shaking. I said, Brian, what's the matter? He flat out said, I'm nervous. I said, his father was a cancer doctor. I said, the people who should be nervous are the people who are going to see your doctor. You're playing baseball. Relax, and something like that. Boone should have gone out there and calmed things down.
What do you think the assessment is, John? Look, I mean, the assessment from within the New York market is one thing. You see the back page of the New York Post, and the headlines would indicate that this was a Yankees team that blew a 3-0 series lead rather than was trying to come back from one. The assessment outside of New York around most of Major League Baseball, I would imagine, is still pretty positive about what the Yankees were able to do this year and what they have going forward. Saving the issue of Juan Soto again for just a minute. What do you think of what the Yankees did this year in getting to this point and at least forcing a 5th game, if nothing else?
There's a certain amount of pressure on the Yankees that doesn't exist with the other 29 teams. They always say if the season doesn't end by winning the World Series, it's been a failure, which I think is pretty almost impossible standard to try to hit every year. They only were 82-80 last year. They didn't have a good season. I mean, especially by their standards, they've had, they came in and they got Juan Soto and he did everything they wanted. They got him in the trade from San Diego, but I thought they had a lot of pressure on him to win, probably more than many other years after picking up Soto and having by their standards, such a bad year last year. I thought they had a good season. I know it unraveled there in that 5th inning the other night in Game 5. And, it did show a little bit of fundamental flaw of that team is they weren't necessarily the most sound team when it comes to base running. I mean, John Sterling, the great John Sterling, who just retired again as their play-by-play radio announcer, said during the division series with the Royals that they look like they're drunk when they're running the bases. And when your own hometown announcer says that, it's pretty bad. But
bad sign,
I think some of the fundamental parts of the game they were able to paper over in the regular season because they hit a lot of home runs. And when you have Judge pulling you through, and he didn't have a good postseason until right there at the end. And I just think they just played bad baseball at the wrong time. And really, they could have won Game 1. They could have won. They could have been up 2-1, 3-2, at least even 2-2 going into Game 5, and it just. Nothing seemed to go their way, and a lot of it was self-inflicted.
Yeah, and they've got teams on their tail too, right? Like another season of experience for the Baltimore Orioles within their own division, and now new ownership in Baltimore that may be willing to spend money that the Angelos family wasn't willing to spend. Are they more competitive? Are they a team that's maybe in on Juan Soto as a finishing piece to what they've already built there? Teams like you mentioned the Royals with Bobby Witt Jr., the Tigers, a surprise team in that division that's already surprisingly stacked with Cleveland. And then you never know when the teams out west may get it together too. Rangers a year off a World Series championship. The Astros are the Astros, certainly, and the Mariners always have pitching. It's just a question of whether they can do anything with it. What is the big takeaway, I guess, John, from this year, 2024 in Major League Baseball as you walk away from it? Is there anything new that we've learned or anything that needs to be carried forth into 2025 that whether it's players, managers, GMs, ownership groups need to recognize now so that they're ahead of the curve, you think?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is really not on the field, but the fact that TV ratings were up. And I realized for the World Series, there was specific reason they had, the two biggest markets, but TV ratings overall were up, and not just in like regional, but also on the national telecasts, which had really been suffering the last few years. The average age of the ticket buyer of MLB tickets went down this year. the 18 to 34 age group, which, everybody markets toward, they picked up considerably there. And another thing, and I know maybe Claudio and I are from a little different generation here about this, but their social media engagements were up over 200% this year. So I think kind of my takeaway from this is baseball is starting to be cool again to the young generation. And honestly, I really thought the last, for 4 or 5 years that they were completely losing a younger market. And when you do that, eventually you're headed toward extinction. But I think to me, that's my biggest takeaway this year is how younger fans have become interested in the game again.
And all three of us come from a time where the idea of a clock involved in Major League Baseball is just, you couldn't even wrap your brain around that until a few years ago. But Claudio, I think it's interesting that, to John's point here, that may have a lot to do with this. A lot of people want to crush Rob Manfred, and rightfully so for some of the stuff he's done in the past. But the institution of a pace of play, these pace of play initiatives, a clock, all of this, it did whittle down the time of games. And there's something to be said, combined with starting games earlier in a lot of markets at, say, 6:40 instead of 7:30. There's something to be said for kids being able to, in April, May, and September, stay up and watch an entire baseball game. But also in the months of summer, in some cases, you walk out of a ball game and there's still some hints of sunlight on the horizon, right? There's something to be said in drawing more, not just the 18 to 34s that John mentioned, Claudio, but drawing more kids back into the game.
Also, I think, and John made some great points. I like what you said about the clock. The two rules I don't like is the man at second base. I don't like that one too much. But the other thing I don't like is you can only throw over to first base, a couple times. That one I don't like. But I think that they've also tried to make it more entertainment. When I was a kid, as John says, I'm an old man screaming at the clouds. I like that phrase John said. I used to like to watch the players warming up. I remember how Tony Pena wore up, or how Mazzilli would warm up, or Cangelosi would warm up. And I enjoyed watching the pitchers throwing pole to pole. That was me. Now they want entertained, the pierogi races, the this, the that, and all kind of the Bill Veeck type philosophy, which is fine, whatever works. I do like the games starting earlier. I think that was good. There were more games in Pittsburgh anyway during the day than I ever remember. Their attendance was so. But so whatever works, you try some different things, and you also have to. I'll put it to you this way: Magic Johnson bought a retail company years ago. He owned it, and he was able to get merchandising license from the NBA. That business only lasted 3 months. So they said, why? He said the guy who was the buyer was horrendous. Who was the buyer? He said, it was me. I bought things that I liked, not what the fans liked. So what Manfred and the suits and the Major League Baseball are saying, okay, it's not what we like. What are the fans telling us they like? And I know my players are always talking about the game and different players, and I think fantasy baseball helps, and everything helps, as John said, social media. So, hey, whatever works to get it's a great game. And I'll say this, maybe I'm biased. I'm involved in other sports, but without question, how many times when my team is winning, I said, God, I wish there was a clock, where you could stall, do something. Baseball is the hardest sport to succeed in. 3 out of 10 times you succeed, you're making zillions, you're a Hall of Famer, and you have to earn every single out. And there's not another sport like it. It's difficult, but I'm glad that, as John said, that it is picking up.
I want to go back to one final off the field thing for this offseason before I ask you a question about on the field and young players, Claudio. But John, I've mentioned Juan Soto a couple times now because he's the crown jewel of this free agency season, this offseason. And he says he'll listen to all 30 teams. Okay. We all know that there's a good 40% of Major League Baseball that either can't or is not willing to spend the money that Scott Boras will find required to land his client in that city. So, Yankees, Mets, I imagine the reigning champs, the Dodgers, may be interested. They're always interested in getting better. Who else is going to be in the market, realistically in the market, for Juan Soto this winter?
Well, I think, like you said, the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers. The Dodgers are in a great position with what Shohei Ohtani did by deferring 680 of that $700 million. They still have a lot of money to go after other big name players. Another one, I think Philadelphia. I think Dave Dombrowski, the vice president of baseball operations, he's always looking to add the star player, always looking to make the splash move. And he's usually done it with great success throughout his career. I think the Phillies will be in on it. I think, some of the other teams, I think the Cubs will at least. I mean, I think, they have the money. San Francisco's chased everybody here in the last 3 or 4 or 5 off seasons. They went after Bryce Harper hard. They actually offered Aaron Judge more money than the Yankees, and he turned them down. And another team to look at is Toronto. They were heavy in on the Ohtani bidding last year, and there were points where I talked to people I know who worked for the Blue Jays. They thought they were going to get him. I mean, they thought that it was that close to where they were going to get him. So, I mean, they have, they're willing to spend. And the one wild card, and it seems kind of funny because they traded him, but, Washington has shed all their big salaries here in the last few years, and they are back. They have a lot of money to spend this winter, and they did take a step forward last year, and they feel like they're close to being contenders, and he can push them over the top. So maybe, just maybe, he winds up back with the Nationals after they traded him a couple years ago.
Who else is out there, in your opinion, John, that you think is going to head this free agent market? I know Corbin Burns is going to be on the market. Jack Flaherty, who just had an impressive offseason. I mean, those are just a couple of the names. Who else are some of the big names that people should keep an eye on when things open up here very soon?
Yeah, I think Corbin Burns is the guy who really, really intrigues me because he's the only true number one type starter on the market. Like you said, there's Jack Flaherty, there's Roki Sasaki, might come over from Japan, and he is considered, some people think he's as good as Yoshinobu, easy to say, Yamamoto, the Japanese pitcher for the Dodgers, who they gave $325 million last year. And this kid is a real wild card if he decides to come to the United States. But I think Burns is going to be interesting. Everybody, and I know it's cliche, but everybody always wants pitching, and this guy is a true number one. He's won a Cy Young. He got traded from Milwaukee to Baltimore right before spring training this year, and he ended up he was everything the Orioles could have hoped for, and it certainly wasn't his fault that they fell short of expectations this year. So, it's going to be interesting, but Roki Sasaki is the guy to keep an eye on because this kid is, I believe he's 24, 25, and he's supposed to be dynamite. And I'm sure there will be a huge market for him should he decide to come over. And also Juan Soto, one other team, too, is going to be surprising, are the Padres. I'm hearing they're going to try to make a bid to bring him back. And they realized that they shouldn't have traded him, though the trade worked out pretty well for them. So it's going to be an interesting offseason with those three. And then, there's plenty of others after those. But to me, those are the big three to watch.
Those are the moves that are going to be made off the field this winter. Claudio, you work with young ball players every day. So what about the moves that need to be made by young guys on the field this winter? I'm thinking in particular about players who may be coming off a really solid year. Speaking of pitching in particular, we had one here in Pittsburgh in Paul Skeens, who, awards will be officially announced in a couple of weeks, but is the prohibitive favorite, should it not be stolen out from underneath him by Jackson Merrill in San Diego, prohibitive favorite to be the National League Rookie of the Year. So just in your experience, what do young players need to do to ensure they're taking positive steps forward over the winter, especially a guy who's trying to keep from maybe regressing from a great first year like Skeens?
Before I answer that, Juan Soto, if I'm him, I stay with the Yankees. 500 million, 700 million, to be honest with you, at that level, what's the difference? He is a New York Yankee type player. The fans love him. He's a showman. It's different than San Diego, Washington, Philadelphia. Yankees is the capital. That's where you want to be. They win the World Series. I stay there if I'm him.
That
Now,
short porch in right field definitely helps too. I mean, he made a meal out of that thing.
that's for sure. As far as what you're saying, you know, if I'm a young player, I'm very, very critical of the development of a lot of major league players. I'm very critical. But if I'm a player, I'm going to a room by myself and watching videos of myself. As for a hitter or a pitcher, Ricky Henderson used to say to his coaches, don't tell me when I'm just doing something bad. Tell me when I'm doing something right so I can repeat it. Okay. Now, little adjustments. Ricky Henderson, when he was in minor leagues, Tom Trebelhorn. Ricky Henderson was fast, but he wasn't like blinding fast. He was fast, but his mechanics weren't great. So what did they have him do? Trebelhorn put a pull over there, and a string. Ricky, when you steal, don't touch that string. He improved his mechanics. Watch videos. These hitters, I told you during the series about flying open. Shohani, Otani flying open. Or Judge, Tom Verducci said that they showed a video of him real quick with his front foot. Just a tiny adjustment that last game, staying closed. I was shocked. I had numerous players text me and call me and say, Coach, look what you were right. I said, hell yeah, I'm right. I'm not just saying it for the hell of it. Now, when I would do, if I'm a player, look at me when I'm succeeding. Okay, I'll give you a quick example. Polanco a couple years ago, when he's against the Dodgers during the COVID time when there was nobody in the stands, he had a 9-pitch at bat against the Dodgers. When he was flipping the ball back or popping the ball foul, he was opening up, logo facing the pitcher and or the second baseman. When he was hitting shots foul or line or almost a foul ball home run, his logo was facing shortstop. The 9th pitch, he hits a shot up the middle. His logo was over there. Nobody told him about it. He should say, wait a minute. When I do this, I'm successful. When I'm doing this, I'm not. Let me do this more consistently. So that's what I would do if I'm a young player. See what I'm doing right, see what I'm doing wrong. And when I'm doing wrong, do it more often right. And it's with these guys, I'm telling you, it's just a minor adjustment. John wrote a great column about the Pirates' next hitting coach, and he has his work cut out for him. John's right, but at the same time, these are professional athletes with blessed hand-eye coordination. It's not going to take that much if you get the right guy. I can guarantee that. I can guarantee it. Now, for a guy like Paul Skeens, a pitcher, don't overthink, don't overdo it. I'm talking about him or somebody who's really blowing it out of the water. Now, if you don't improve, everybody catches up to you. So you have to say to yourself, what were my holes? When I did get hit, what did I do wrong? Was it pitch selection that I threw? Was it the command of a certain pitch? And conditioning for a pitcher. Both legs, when we were growing up, they ran. And there wasn't as many arm problems because mechanics, they use more leg. They just concentrate on the arm. I would get in great shape. Flexibility is incredibly important. So I can barely lift my right arm because I didn't stretch properly. Okay. These guys, they can hire the trainers, stretch, be careful with the lifting, tone, sure, but don't go crazy with the lifting. CC Sabathia said, I never pulled a muscle because I didn't have one. Then he did get hurt because he was lifting too much. So for a pitcher, yes, fine when you made mistakes, improve your command, which is hard, but in conditioning. Vince Lombardi used to say, fatigue makes cowards of us all. So be in shape physically, with your legs and your arm, then you'll be in shape mentally. A hitter, it's black and white. Well, right in front of you, what you do right and wrong. When you fly open, hey, wait a minute. When I fly open, the bat drops and drags. I flip it or I miss or I pop up. When I hit line drives or shots, look at Aaron Judge. He hit a shot to left field that was caught. He was closed, right? Muncy struggled in the postseason, but when he hit some shots, he was closed. It's not that damn hard. It really isn't. People make it harder than it has to be. A player he knows his body. We all know our bodies. You don't put a blanket on everything, but there are some things as a hitter that you have to adhere to. Watch video. Then go out and fix it. Watch the video. Go out and fix it. The proper drills, not the craziness. And that's it. Watch the drills. See what you did right. See what you did wrong. And repeat the right stuff and eliminate the bad. Pitchers, get in good shape, legs, arm, stretch, and you'll be good defensively. Field properly, field properly. And also videos. A guy like Torres can be easily had when you're on that, and same with Judge, when you're on that back leg like that, okay? All you have to do is a slight adjustment, a little pause, and that hitter is done. Years ago, Wainwright, and I apologize, but Wainwright was facing the Pirates, ironically. And when he was throwing, he had a rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. And the Pirates were hitting him. He said, my command is good, my speed is good, movement's good, but they're hitting me. And all he did was boom, boom, boom. Changed his motion just a hair. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that was the end of it. And the Pirates, because they were timing the pitcher, not the pitch. Freeman Ortiz asked him, you're in a zone. Well, how do you get in the zone? How many times have we heard as a hitter, the ball looks like a beach ball? It's the same size. They see it sooner and longer. A basketball player, man, you're on target. You're shooting. They said the basket looks like a big old bucket. It's the same size. They see it longer. Vision equals confidence, equals fast hands, equals power. You slow the game down. So things work on those things consistently, and you'll have a much better season. You won't get into that sophomore funk, or you'll have a better season than what you had last year.
There are some guys who are ahead of the curve or maybe behind the curve due to injuries or anything else that happened in their development throughout the spring and summer, John, that are out there in the Arizona Fall League right now getting some reps in. Pirates fans, they're used to always looking ahead to the prospects, right? Because that's where the improvement is going to come if it comes from anywhere. Rarely is it going to come from the outside free agent market or big trades. But who that's out there in Arizona in the AFL right now, should fans have an eye on that maybe, is developing enough that they could actually contribute next year at the major league level?
One guy I'm looking forward to is Roman Anthony, an outfielder in the Boston Red Sox organization. Now, I haven't seen him other than just a little bit of video clip highlights on the internet. I haven't seen him in person. But scouts I talked to this year, when I'd say, hey, who do you see in the minor leagues you really liked? And they all kept coming back to this kid who's an outfielder with power and speed. And he made a quick ascent through the farm system. He finished up at AAA, and he's only 20. So I'm really looking forward to him, because guys that I know and trust really, really seem to like him. And, another guy, getting a little more toward Pittsburgh wise is Tamar Johnson, the second baseman, who was their number one draft pick a few years back. And he struggled out of the gate this year in high A ball and really struggled, but he got things turned around. He finished the year up at Double A, and he's had a good fall league. And, sometimes the fall league numbers are you have to take them a little bit with the fact that it's Arizona and it's fall, and which is why they call it the Fall League, I guess. And anyway, so the ball really carries in Arizona in the fall and the spring, and with the humidity and lack of humidity, I should say, and the dry air. So you have to be a little bit, when you see these numbers and pitchers the same way, when you see like, wow, this guy had a 6 ERA in the Arizona Fall League, he must not really be a prospect. Well, not necessarily so. It's just such a different environment. But those are two guys that I like a lot, Roman Anthony and Tamar Johnson. And unfortunately, the general managers meetings are usually in Phoenix, so I get a chance to see a couple of games while I'm out there in Arizona. But unfortunately, this year they're in San Antonio, so I'm kind of bummed. I always enjoy going to see the games. It's really remarkable. I mean, you have all these prospects, and a lot of times there's like 50 people in the stands. There's like nobody there. And I mean, for $10, if you're like a real hardcore baseball junkie, like a lot of people would come to draftnation.com, I mean, that's the greatest value there is, to see that many top prospects for $10 and basically sit wherever you want. Which in last year I went to a game, I sat right behind home plate. So that was,
the future of Major League Baseball on display right there in a lot of cases. I got to thank both of you for your time today. It was great to chop up the World Series with you.